The Galactic Academy loomed ahead, a gleaming marvel of architecture against the star-studded void of space. As the newest class of cadets streamed through its hallowed gates, excitement and trepidation crackled through the air. They came from 100 different worlds, each the pride of their people, intent on joining the ranks of the galaxy's most renowned peacekeeping force. Yet the Academy held many surprises, as the cadets would soon discover. The welcoming address commenced in the Great Hall, a vast amphitheater that could comfortably seat thousands. Holographic banners fluttered overhead, representing the myriad worlds under the Galactic Federation's protection. Whispered voices echoed off the curved walls until the Academy Commandant took the stage. His withered visage commanded instant silence. "Welcome, cadets," his voice boomed. "You have come far to be here. Each of you represents the best your species has to offer. But do not think your prior accomplishments guarantee success." His iron gaze raked the audience. "Here, you begin anew. You will be tested in body, mind, and spirit. Some of you will not survive the crucible. Those that do will join the ranks of the galaxy's shield, the Galactic Federation Cosmic Corps. Your road begins now. Look to your left, look to your right. They are your crewmates, your comrades in arms. Learn from each other and lift each other, for alone you will surely fail." The Commandant paused, letting his words settle over the room like a shroud. "Now go, find your barracks. Your orientation packages await you there. Training begins on the morrow." Dismissed. The cadets surged to their feet in a single motion, a trick of the amphitheater's variable gravity fields. Excitement buzzed through the hall, tempered by undercurrents of unease. No sooner had the Commandant vanished from the stage than the hollow projectors flared to life once more. Row by row, the cadets found their designations scrolling in the air before them. Among the cadets strode a quartet from the oceanic world of Vanami. Zorlacs were renowned for their mathematical minds and the strength granted by their homeworld's punishing gravity. This group had studied and trained together for this day. Now, seeing their designations, they performed their race's ritual gesture of solidarity, interweaving their tentacles in a brief tangle. "Well met, podmates," Kazloth said. "Let us find our barracks." They arrived at Barracks Dome 1486 Horek. The other cadets assigned to this dome slowly trickled in, arrangement guided by the unseen hand of the Academy's parsing engines. By custom, podmates could bunk together, but the remainder of the assignments carefully mixed species. The intent was clear, to force the cadets to mingle outside their comfort zones. Still more unusual was a second notice on the barracks holoboard. "Attention," it flashed. "Your first training rotation is Close Combat Auditorium 12, Spur 8. Instructor, Colonel Maximilian Tanner, Human Expeditionary Forces." A shocked silence gripped the dome. A human? Here? Instructing in close combat? Everyone knew humans were barely civilized, a fractious and warlike species that had only recently been granted provisional recognition by the Federation. Many races considered that a mistake, given mankind's belligerent history. Their soldiers were undeniably fierce on the battlefield, but to put one in charge of training the next generation of Cosmic Corps? It was unthinkable. "This has to be a mistake," Kazloth said, its chromatophores flashing in distress. "No way they'd let a human teach combat." "You did hear the Commandant," Aridi of Arquin said. It towered over the other cadets on stilt-like legs. "We all begin anew here." Looks like that applies to the staff too. Privately, they wondered how such spindly appendages would fare in close combat training. I don't like it," rumbled an Oltani, its shaggy bulk nearly filling a bunk alcove. "My grandsire told me of humans. Tricky lot, not to be trusted." "Nothing for it," Kazloth said. "We've got our orders. We'll keep an eye on this human. Steer clear if he looks as shifty as the rumors say." The other cadets nodded at this sage advice. Elsewhere in the dome, similar conversations unfolded as the cadets absorbed their disconcerting news. For now, speculation was all they had. The real measure of their strange new instructor would come soon enough on the training field. The lights in Auditorium 12 abruptly dropped to half illumination as Colonel Max Tanner strode onto the stage, his footfalls echoing in the sudden hush. He was of average height and build by human standards, yet he moved with the coiled grace of a natural predator. His close-cropped salt and pepper hair framed a face that looked chiseled from granite, all hard planes and angles. A puckered scar ran along his jawline, mute testament to a life spent at war. Tanner came to a precise halt at the center podium. His ice-blue eyes raked the assembled cadets, seeming to penetrate to the core of each being. A minute passed in nerve-wracking silence. Then he spoke, his voice a low rasp. "I am Colonel Maximilian Tanner, Human Expeditionary Forces, detached to the Galactic Federation Cosmic Corps. I will be your close combat instructor for this term." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "Let's get one thing straight," he continued. "I'm not here to coddle you. I'm here to turn you into soldiers. That means breaking you down and rebuilding you, harder and stronger than before. Some of you will wash out. Some may even die." A chill rippled through the auditorium. "You're here because you're supposed to be the best. I don't give a damn about your pedigree. Here, you start from zero. Prove yourself to me." Kozloff exchanged uneasy glances with its podmates. This human was as blunt as the rumors said. It made their instructor's back on Vanami seem downright nurturing. Tanner tapped a control and a holographic display sprang to life above the stage. The cadets craned their necks, unsure what to expect. What they saw was a shock. Human children, scarcely more than hatchlings, running and tumbling in a playground under an alien sun. "Behold, your first lesson," Tanner said. "Watch closely." On the display, a group of boys appeared to be play-fighting, grappling and throwing mock punches with obvious relish. Their laughter had a distinct savage tinge. "You see?" Tanner asked. "Aggression. Controlled violence. We humans learn it at a young age, practice it in our play." The display shifted, now showing a girl skillfully navigating an elaborate structure of bars and ropes, swinging from arm to arm with reckless grace. Fearlessness. Daring. Ingrained in our young through challenge and competition. Next, the display showed a mixed group of children embroiled in a complex game involving a ball, 2 goals, and what looked to be very few rules. The children ran and crashed into each other with bruising force. Teamwork. Sacrifice. Working together to achieve a goal against an opponent. Tanner turned back to the cadets. "This is the clay we mold into warriors." The cadets sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were seeing. Many came from species that nurtured and protected their young with utmost delicacy, shielding them from all potential harm or adversity until they were mature. The idea of childhood being a crucible for honing combat traits was utterly alien. Tanner seemed to sense their unease. He forged ahead. "We'll come back to this. For now, know that every human soldier carries these early lessons onto the battlefield. It makes us formidable." He tapped the control again and the display vanished. "But you're not human. You've been coddled, sheltered. That ends now. Time to wake up those survival instincts." The colonel fixed the cadets with his cutting gaze. "Report to training field Kappa at 0500 tomorrow. We'll see what you're made of." Dismissed. As the cadets filed out, a babble of excited and nervous conversation filled the auditorium. "Did you see that? What have we gotten into? This is going to be a long term." Only Kozloff remained silent, its mind awhirl with what it had seen. This human was going to be a challenge, no doubt. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was something valuable to learn from the colonel's unorthodox approach. The coming days would tell. The first rays of the system's star had barely kissed the horizon when the cadets assembled on training field Kappa. The sprawling expanse of red clay and gravel seemed to stretch to infinity in the half-light, broken only by scattered obstacle courses and mock structures. Colonel Tanner stood before them, a still figure in the pre-dawn gloom. "Good morning, cadets," he said. "Welcome to your first day of real training. We'll start with a light warm-up. 10 laps around the field, double time. Move." The cadets startled into motion, some more gracefully than others. The Avirquin loped ahead on their long legs, while the bulky Ultani lumbered behind. Zorlax like Kozloff fell into a smooth gliding gait, but even their endurance was tested by the time the 10th lap came around. They reassembled before Tanner, breath coming hard and fast. The colonel hadn't moved an inch. Barely adequate, he said. We'll make runners of you yet. Now, drop and give me 50. Confusion rippled through the group. 50 what, sir? A cadet ventured. Push-ups, Tanner said, dropping to demonstrate the unfamiliar exercise. A classic human strength builder. Down you go. The cadets scrambled to comply with varying degrees of success. The Avirquin's stilt-like arms quivered under the strain, while the Ultani's shaggy bulk made the movement almost impossible. Kazloth fared better, its tentacles strong from swimming against the crushing pressures of Vanamee's depths. Tanner strode between the struggling rows, barking encouragement and correction. Lower, cadet. I want that nose to touch the ground. You call that a push-up? My grandmother could do better, and she's been dead for 20 years. By the time they reached 50, every cadet was trembling with exhaustion. Tanner looked them over with a critical eye. Sloppy, but it's a start. On your feet. Time for the real work to begin. What followed was a grueling sequence of drills and exercises, each more punishing than the last. They crawled under nets, swung from ropes, scaled walls, and lifted weights. All the while, Tanner watched a hawk-eyed taskmaster. It was during a brief respite that the colonel sprang his next surprise. All right, cadets, listen up. We're going to play a little game. He held up a ball, a simple sphere of patterned black and white. This is called a soccer ball. 2 teams, 1 ball, 2 goals. Kick the ball into the other team's goal to score a point. No hands allowed. Got it? The cadets looked at each other uncertainly. This was training? But Tanner was already dividing them into teams, ignoring the bewilderment on their faces. The game was chaos. Cadets tripped over each other, missed kicks sent the ball flying wildly astray. But gradually, a semblance of order emerged. The Avirquin proved adept at intercepting passes with their long legs, while the Zorlak's tentacles gave them an uncanny grip on the ball. The Ultani, once they got moving, were unstoppable juggernauts. Through it all, Tanner shouted and whistled from the sidelines. Press the attack. Defense, close those gaps. Work together, you're a team. By the time the game ended, the cadets were bruised, muddy, and utterly spent. But there was a new light in their eyes, a glimmer of camaraderie forged through shared struggle. As they trudged off the field, Kazloth found itself next to a towering Ultani. The being looked down, its shaggy brow furrowed. I still don't get it, it rumbled. How does kicking a ball around make us better soldiers? Kazloth considered this. Its time in the Vanamee Scholarium had not covered such unorthodox training methods. I think, it said slowly, it's about more than just the game. It's about learning to work together, to think on our feet. The colonel is teaching us to adapt, to overcome. The Ultani looked thoughtful. Huh. Maybe you're right. Still seems weird, though. As they neared the barracks dome, they saw Colonel Tanner waiting at the entrance. He looked each cadet in the eye as they passed, offering a nod or a clipped word of praise. When Kazloth reached him, the colonel paused. Good hustle out there, cadet, he said. You're a quick study. Kazloth felt a flush of pride. Thank you, sir. I'm trying to understand the purpose behind the training. Tanner's granite face softened for a moment. Purpose, eh? That's good. Never stop asking that question. He leaned closer, his voice low and intense. War is coming, cadet. A storm is brewing at the edges of our galaxy. We need to be ready. With that cryptic warning, he straightened and moved on to the next cadet, leaving Kazloth to wonder at his words. A war? Now? The galaxy had known peace for generations. Who would dare threaten that? Deep in thought, Kazloth entered the barracks dome, the colonel's words echoing in its mind. Whatever was coming, one thing was certain. Their training had taken on a new urgency. The fate of the galaxy might well rest on how well they learned the lessons of Colonel Maximilian Tanner. Kazloth laid a tentacle on Grohl's shoulder. We have to trust in our training, it said, trying to project a confidence it didn't quite feel. The colonel has prepared us for this. We're ready. Grohl nodded, straightening its massive frame. You're right. We can do this. For the Federation, right? For the Federation, Kazloth agreed. The next hour passed in a blur of activity as the cadets boarded transport ships and lifted off, en route to their designated postings. As the academy receded behind them, the enormity of their situation began to sink in. They were heading into the unknown, into a war that would shape the future of the galaxy. On the bridge of the lead transport, Colonel Tanner stood watching the cadets. His face was impassive, but his mind was awhirl with thoughts. These were his charges, his responsibility. He had molded them, shaped them into soldiers. Now, he could only hope it would be enough. The journey to the front lines was tense and quiet, each cadet lost in their own thoughts. Kasloth found itself running through the drills and exercises Tanner had taught them, trying to find some anchor in the familiar routines. When they finally arrived at the staging area, the scale of the conflict became clear. Ships of every size and configuration crowded the space, a vast armada of the Galactic Federation's might. And in the distance, barely visible on long-range scans, the Zotan fleet loomed, a dark shadow against the stars. Colonel Tanner gathered his cadets one last time before they dispersed to their units. His face was grave, but his eyes held a fierce light. "This is it," he said. "The moment you've all been training for. Out there, the Zotan await. They are fierce, they are ruthless. But so are you." He swept his gaze over the assembled cadets, making eye contact with each one. "Remember your training. Watch your corners, cover your squad mates. Trust in each other, and you will prevail." He snapped a crisp salute. "It has been my honor to be your instructor. Now go out there and make me proud." Dismissed. With a final roar of acknowledgement, the cadets dispersed, each to their own ship and squad. Kasloth found itself aboard a sleek frigate, the VSS Dauntless, its tentacles flying over the control panels as it took its station. As the fleet moved into position, the comm channels crackled with chatter, commands, status reports, final words of encouragement. And then, with a blinding flash, the Zotan were upon them, and the battle was joined. The void erupted into a maelstrom of fire and fury as the two fleets clashed. Ships wheeled and turned, trading blistering volleys of energy beams and missiles. Fighters darted between the behemoths, locked in their own deadly dances. Aboard the Dauntless, Kasloth worked furiously, relaying orders, coordinating with the ship's gunners. The lessons of the Academy flashed through its mind: teamwork, communication, split-second decision-making. It was all being put to the test now, in the crucible of real combat. Hours blurred into days as the battle raged on. The Galactic Federation held the line, but at a terrible cost. Ships burned and died, their crews consigned to the cold embrace of space. And through it all, the Zotan pressed their attack, relentless and unyielding. It was in the darkest hour, with the fleet on the brink of collapse, that the call came. Colonel Tanner's voice, hard and urgent over the comm: "All units, prepare for ground assault. We're taking the fight to the enemy." Kasloth felt a thrill of fear and anticipation. Ground combat, the arena they had trained for. It exchanged a glance with its crewmates, seeing the same determination etched on their faces. They were ready. They had to be. As the dropships descended towards the contested world below, Kasloth thought back to those early days at the Academy, to the lessons Colonel Tanner had drilled into them. They had seemed so abstract then, so far removed from the reality of war. But now, as the hatch opened and the chaos of battle rushed in to meet them, Kasloth understood. This was what they had been preparing for all along. The real test was about to begin. The dropship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere, the heat of re-entry enveloping the hull. Inside, Kasloth and its squad clung to their restraints, the tension palpable. This was it, the moment they had trained for. The baptism of fire. Colonel Tanner's voice crackled over the comm, steady and sure. "Remember your training. Stick with your squad, watch your sectors. We hit the ground running." The ship bucked and lurched as enemy fire streaked past. The pilot's voice, strained but calm: "Brace for impact." The landing was rough, the ship slamming into the ground with bone-jarring force. But there was no time to recover. The hatch blew open, and the squad was charging out into the maelstrom of battle. The scene was chaos. Zotan shock troops swarmed over the rugged terrain, their exoskeletons glinting in the harsh light of the planet's twin suns. Plasma fire crisscrossed the battlefield, searing the air. Kazlotha's training kicked in, its tentacles flying over its weapon as it sought a target. Beside it, Grawl let out a roar, the Ultani's massive frame shuddering as it unleashed a barrage from its heavy repeater. The squad moved as one, bounding from cover to cover, laying down suppressing fire. They had drilled these maneuvers countless times under Colonel Tanner's watchful eye. Now, with adrenaline surging and death whistling past, those lessons kept them alive. But the Zotan were relentless. They surged forward, heedless of losses, driven by a fearsome warrior code. Kazloth saw a squad mate fall, then another, their cries lost in the din of battle. They were being pushed back, the Zotan's superior numbers telling. Kazloth could feel despair starting to grip the squad, the cold realization that they might not see the end of this day. And then, over the comm, a familiar voice, "Hold the line." Colonel Tanner's dropship swooped in, the colonel himself leaping from the hatch before it had even touched the ground. He hit the dirt rolling, coming up with his rifle already blazing. "Squad, on me," he roared. Kazloth felt a surge of renewed hope. The colonel was here, fighting alongside them. They could do this. The squad rallied, their fire intensifying. Under Tanner's direction, they began to coordinate their efforts, Ultani strength and Zorlak precision weaving together into a lethal tapestry. Slowly, inch by bloody inch, they began to push the Zotan back. Tanner was everywhere, his rifle cracking, his voice a constant presence on the comm, flank left. "Suppress that target. Hold that position." Kazloth marveled at the colonel's skill, the way he seemed to anticipate the enemy's every move. This was the product of a lifetime of warfare, the human instinct for battle honed to a razor's edge. Hours blurred together, a ceaseless cycle of advance and retreat, of terror and triumph. The squad's world narrowed to the next target, the next position, the next desperate fight to stay alive. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The Zotan broke, their lines shattering under the relentless pressure. A cheer went up from the Federation lines, ragged and exhausted, but alive with victory. In the aftermath, as medics tended to the wounded and techs secured the captured Zotan equipment, Colonel Tanner gathered his battered squad. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes shone with fierce pride. "You held," he said simply. "Against all odds, against everything the Zotan threw at us, you held." He clasped each of them by the shoulder, a warrior's accolade. When he came to Kazloth, the colonel paused. "I saw you out there," he said. "Quick thinking, adapting on the fly. You remembered your training." Kazloth felt a flush of pride. "We had a good teacher," it said. Tanner nodded, a rare smile ghosting across his face. "You did well, all of you. But this is just the beginning. The Zotan are on the back foot now, but they won't stay that way for long. We have to press the advantage." He looked out over the battlefield, his expression hardening. "This war is far from over. But today, you proved that we can win it. One battle at a time, one squad at a time, until the galaxy is safe once more." Kazloth followed the colonel's gaze, taking in the scope of the destruction. It was a sobering sight. But beneath the exhaustion and the grief, a new feeling was taking root. A feeling of purpose, of resolve. They had been tested, and they had not been found wanting. They were soldiers of the Galactic Federation, defenders of the peace. And they would fight on, no matter the cost, until the job was done. The war raged on, a conflict unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The Zotan, for all their ferocity, found themselves slowly, inexorably pushed back by the might of the Galactic Federation. And at the forefront of every battle, in the thick of every fight, were the cadets of the Academy, the students of Colonel Maximilian Tanner. They fought with a skill and determination that belied their youth, a testament to the training they had undergone. Under fire, they worked as a seamless unit, Zorlak precision, Ultani strength, and Avirquin's speed blending into a formidable fighting force. And always, leading from the front, was Colonel Tanner. His tactics, unconventional and daring, became the stuff of legend. He seemed to have a preternatural sense for the enemy's movements, an uncanny ability to turn the tide of a battle with a single, decisive strike. The cadets followed him without question, their trust in their commander absolute. They had seen firsthand what human resolve could achieve, and they drew strength from Tanner's indomitable will. Weeks turned into months, and the tide of the war began to turn. The Zotan, their numbers dwindling and their supplies running low, began to retreat, pulling back to their strongholds in the Galactic Rim. The Federation pressed the advantage, liberating occupied worlds and smashing Zotan war machines. And at the spearhead of every advance were the soldiers of the Academy, the cadets who had become veterans. Finally, after a grueling campaign that had tested every ounce of their skill and courage, the war was won. The Zotan, their once mighty empire in ruins, sued for peace. The galaxy, scarred but unbroken, began the slow process of healing. For the cadets, the end of the war brought a bittersweet mix of emotions. Joy at their victory, grief for their fallen comrades, and a profound sense of change. They had left the academy as students, uncertain and untested. They returned as soldiers, forged in the crucible of war. The ceremony was held on the parade grounds of the academy, beneath a sky filled with the ships of a dozen worlds. The cadets stood in perfect formation, their uniforms crisp, their faces alight with pride. Colonel Tanner stood before them, his own uniform blazoned with the ribbons of 100 campaigns. His face, once so stern and unyielding, now held a softness, a deep well of emotion. "Cadets," he began, his voice carrying across the assembly. "No, not cadets. Soldiers. Warriors. Brothers and sisters in arms." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the ranks. "When you came to this academy, you were raw recruits, untested and unsure. I pushed you, I challenged you, I demanded everything you had to give. And you rose to that challenge, every one of you. You learned to work as a team, to trust in each other. You learned to adapt, to overcome. And when the call came, when the galaxy needed you most, you answered." His voice grew thick with emotion. "I have never been more proud than I am today, looking out at you. You have proven yourselves, not just as soldiers, but as defenders of the peace, as guardians of the galaxy." He raised his hand in a crisp salute. "It has been my greatest honor to be your instructor, your commander, and your friend. Today, you leave this academy not as cadets, but as the finest soldiers the Galactic Federation has ever known." As one, the assembled warriors returned the salute, a final gesture of respect and gratitude. Then, with a roar of engines, the ships above began their flyover, a dazzling display of precision and power. And as Kozlov stood there, surrounded by its comrades, its friends, it felt a swell of emotion. Pride in what they had achieved, sorrow for what they had lost, and a fierce determination to carry on the legacy of Colonel Tanner and the Academy. They were soldiers of the Galactic Federation, defenders of the peace. And they would continue to stand watch, to protect and serve, no matter the challenge, no matter the cost. As the flyover reached its crescendo, Kozlov looked to the sky, to the infinite expanse of stars. Out there, it knew, new challenges awaited, new threats to the peace they had fought so hard to win. But they would be ready. They were the products of Colonel Tanner's training, the inheritors of his indomitable will. They would face whatever came with the same courage, the same resolve that had seen them through the crucible of war. For they were soldiers, warriors, guardians of the galaxy. They were the cadets of the academy, now and forever. And as the ceremony ended and the warriors dispersed to their new postings and assignments, each carried with them a piece of Colonel Tanner's legacy. A legacy of strength, of determination, of unwavering dedication to the cause of peace. They would carry that legacy to the stars, to the far reaches of the galaxy. And wherever they went, they would remember the lessons of their time at the academy, the lessons that had made them the soldiers they were today. Lessons of courage, of sacrifice, of the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. Lessons that would guide them, sustain them, through whatever trials lay ahead. And so, as Kozlov boarded its new ship, ready to face the unknown, it carried with it a quiet confidence, a deep and abiding faith in itself and its comrades. They were ready for anything and everything. They were the soldiers of the Galactic Federation. They were the cadets of Colonel Maximilian Tanner.